Welcome to Cut the Bull, an insightful podcast which addresses the news of the day and the cultural issues plaguing our society, bringing logic and context to these topics and discussing solutions too real for mainstream pundits. Now, here are your hosts, Charles Love, Shamika Michelle, and Wilfred Riley.
Hello, and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love with my co-hosts Shamika Michelle and Will Riley. And our guest this week, you obviously know. Here he is.
That's right.
Hi, it's Nick Searcy. I'm calling for Congresswoman Omar. I was making the film about God in America. Well, do you know when she'll be in? Well, is her brother there? Or her husband? Or whatever?
There he is. He is the insurrectional film star, Nick Searcy. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Charles, Shamika, Wilfred. It's great to be here with you guys.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to have you. You know, I spoke to you a year ago, and a lot has changed since then. It was August of last year, so it was almost a full year, and we were talking about. This was way back when we were still dealing with COVID thing. I don't know if you all remember that. It was a virus going on, COVID, a year ago. We talked about that and how it was how it was affecting Hollywood and changing businesses and industries, and talking about Hollywood might be dead. So I guess I want to start off asking you what it's like there now that we're past that, and it's been a year, and we're in the next phase. So what is going on in California? How is Hollywood holding up, and what is different now than it was last year?
Well, it's starting to come back to life a little bit, I guess, at least on the production level. You know, there seems to be a lot more activity going on out here, but just like it was before, I mean, most of the things that are starting up don't shoot here because it's almost impossible to shoot in California unless you are, shooting on a studio set or something. So everything that I see that sort of comes my way are things that are shooting in Georgia or Oklahoma or Montana. But there's a lot, I would say it's slowly warming up. I mean, I have a lot of friends, not only actors, but just like production crew members and stuff that are, saying that it's still pretty lean out there. There's just not as much work as there used to be.
Mm-hmm. So we on our first episode, we had Clifton Duncan on. He's a Broadway actor, and he was talking about, obviously, it got shut down, so he had to do some different work, and he was doing some TV work. And he was talking about the crazy, irrational COVID rules they had at the time. So it was things like you had to social distance and wear a mask and not talk to the other crew and the other actors. But then once they say action, you're back to, kissing and dry humping and, yelling at the scene and doing all this other kind of stuff. So it's like you needed to be safe only when it didn't matter. But at the time it matters when you're closest to people. Safety went out the window. So have you experienced any of that, or do you see any of these crazy rules? I think you started to talk about some of the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I did a movie last October in Oklahoma, a movie called Reagan, and it's about Ronald Reagan, and it stars Dennis Quaid, and it's got a pretty nice cast, but it was insane. I mean, just the rules were so stupid. All the actors had to be tested every 2 days, and nobody could ride in a van. They had to rent each actor his own car so that he wouldn't be riding in a car with anybody else. And here's the craziest story. I tell this story a lot. We're shooting this scene where it's supposed to be the Republican National Convention in 1976. And so they're shooting it really tight in this small space because they don't have a lot of money. And all the actors had to wear masks to and from the set. Even in the golf cart by yourself, you have to ride in the back and you have to put a mask on. So we all come in, all the actors come in with their masks on, and there's about 75 to 80 background actors in there, in costume, all with their masks on. Mm-hmm. And so the first AD comes out and he says, okay, when you hear us say rolling, everybody take your mask off and put it in your pocket. And we're all crammed together in this little space. Everybody take your mask off and put it in your pocket, and then we'll play the scene. and then as soon as you hear the word cut, put your mask back on. And I said, yeah, that's because we're doing a scene in 1976. And in 1976, the virus didn't exist. So as long as your acting is really good, you're safe while your mask is off. But if you guys suck, you are in trouble. So you better act your ass off or you're going to get sick. And first AD goes, Nick, you're not helping anything. But the rules are so stupid. I mean, it's just none. That's the whole thing about this COVID problem, is that none of it makes just basic common sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Right, and if you say something, then you're a right-wing anti-vaxxer. We know that. So, Shamika, Will, you got anything about Hollywood before I move on to California in general?
No, I mean, I agree with Nick. The COVID rules don't make any sense. I mean, one of the things I will say, just from kind of a local leadership perspective, like, it was very obvious really early on what you needed to do to limit COVID as much as possible. I mean, we knew from Italy that the average age of a victim was 81. I mean, we knew that what spreads COVID, and this has been true up to Delta, and it's probably still true, is spending more than 15 minutes in sort of an indoor space with another human being. That outdoor environments almost don't spread COVID. So, I mean, in Frankfurt and in surrounding just normal places, I mean, people talked about some of this stuff, like how do you protect seniors? That's step one. If you want to stop COVID from actually killing people, you might want to cancel large events. And then there's just sort of basic NPI, clean your body, stay home if you're sick, wear a mask if you want to. Most of the rules that people designed I think most of the COVID rules were designed basically to reassure panicked middle-class people to the point where they'd get out there in the world. They have absolutely nothing to do with actually preventing COVID. And this is true with a lot of this stuff, actually. Like, I mean, I was in sales a decade or so ago, and after 9/11, obviously go through airports, you take off your shoes and do all this other crap, put your arms above your head and get, MRI scan. And I was once in a line with this guy in the Army who was like, couldn't a real terrorist just sharpen a plastic toothbrush, stick it up his ass, and bring it on the plane? And it's kind of like a crude, obvious question, but it's real. If you're an actual fighter for Al-Qaeda, it wouldn't be hard at all for you to get through all this BS. So it's that same kind of stupid ritual designed to make people feel better. And so basically my point is I pretty much agree with Nick. But I think this goes beyond COVID. I think this is a major feature of life, this sort of how could you get on the plane without your gloves on kind of BS. And it does have a role in that it makes most ordinary people feel comfortable enough to do things. But beyond that, I don't see any place for it at all. Especially like a movie set is the classic example. They had to wear masks on porn movie sets. So, like, I mean, this is an actual fact. You can check this out if you know anyone in the adult industry. Like, you would wear your mask, you'd go on the set, you'd give head to 7 guys, then you'd put your mask back on, and you'd sit around on the set. So is that really saving lives? Just one human being? Probably not. And I also suspect there aren't a lot of grandmothers on the typical porn set. Although you never know. There is some niche stuff out there.
There's a market for that.
Not necessarily.
Well, I got one question about what you said, but I think after the 7 guys in head, Shamika should probably make her point, and then I will go on. If you have anything to
move from there to a lady like Shamika.
I know, how sexist.
Well, I didn't go to her to talk about that. To say, did she have anything to say?
I mean, although I do know a little bit about it, but no, I was just going to say, I agree. I think the rules have been crazy. Even, just telling people to constantly wash their hands. Like, I thought people were washing their hands.
They were not, by the way. Stop right there. No, they weren't. In their defense, now I have to defend them. They weren't. But go on.
I see. When I realized that women will come right out of the stall and just walk right out, and I'm like, okay, that's why, because I thought we were all washing our hands, but I realized we were not. And I remember this little girl went into the bathroom, and when she came out, we said, did you wash your hands? And she said, no, I didn't touch the toilet. So I guess maybe that's why they don't wash their hands. But I think the rules have been crazy. I wanted to talk to Nick because he's from North Carolina. Woo!
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, and, you were too. Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
We'll see what happens. See if we get him back. But the show must go on. He's an actor. He'd understand that.
Right.
But what I was going to say about what Will said that a lot of these rules were put into place to make like neurotic middle class people more comfortable so they can get back in the world. You know, a la 9/11 when they said keep them. George Bush was like keep living, except. I'm a little confused because if their goal was to get people to go back to the world, to go out in the world and go back to life, they closed the world and put a close sign on it so they couldn't go back up into life. And then they tried to scare the crap out of them so they wouldn't go back into life. So even if that was the reason, isn't it kind of counter? So if the reason for them doing it was to say, you know, we're just going to, if you just wear gloves and mask and a hat and do all this stuff, you can go outside. But then they closed outside. So their rules were even working against the things they were pushing, right? Well,
I don't. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on. We can hear you. And Will's speaking, but Will's on mute.
Oh, I'm back on. But just really quickly, I want to hear what Nick has to say here. But I do think this is why masks became so kind of talismanic, as it were. Like, the deal in a lot of mid-sized states like Kentucky was that lockdowns would basically totally end. Now, many people, including myself, you know, the Janester, so on, we're just kind of living life. Many people had COVID already. There were quite a few, you go to smaller towns, there are quite a few establishments that aren't going to allow themselves to go out of business that are open. But, I mean, the deal in Kentucky, Indiana, a lot of just sort of sane mid-continental states was lockdowns are totally over if you do this, and this ritual thing. And I have to think that a lot of these governors knew, again, the average victim's 82, most of the deaths are coming out of the care homes. Is this going to do anything? Maybe not. But that was kind of the deal. And I think that's why people became so attached to the mask. It almost had that religious symbology, like this is the thing that lets me become free. This is the thing that lets me leave my house. In reality, like, serious studies put the efficacy of masks at like 2%. So the dark secret with COVID is that it's not Black Plague. Like, you could have left your house at any time if you'd had an antibody test, if you knew you weren't going to be around old people, just if you said, this is my right as a citizen. But the thing a lot of people use to justify living, again, to themselves, and I know this, they're thinking of, like, my upper middle class friends in the Midwest was, well, I'm masked. Well, I'm doing this or that other thing. Well, I test once a week. So I do think that stuff really had very little to do with preventing the spread of COVID. Like, people would mask up and go to protests, but it gave people an excuse to get out again. A lot of people just need that excuse. Will shoes stop a terrorist? No.
Right, but here's the problem: is that we are looking to our leaders. They're giving us all different kinds of things. So we're having these, you know, bloodbath fights on social media and in the media and the news and on TV and all over the place. And it's, to them, it's clear. It's a clear cut. If you don't do this, you hate people and you're a terrible person and you want people to die. So you need to do this. And you just rationally saying, but wait a minute, I just want things to make sense. And I'm going to get to some numbers later because Will likes numbers. But the four of us are in 4 different places. And I can guarantee, without looking up, I know what state we're all in, but I didn't look it up, that the rules where we are are different everywhere we are, right? So I'm in South Carolina right now. And up until a couple of days ago, I didn't see anybody with a mask on. Occasionally you see people now, but seniors aren't even wearing masks here. I know Shamika's tweeted out some things about North Carolina. Will just said what's going on there. Nick, you can tell us what's going on in California. I know it's been up and down, but my point is that there are people yelling at us, who are us being the rational people in the room, whether they're vaccinated or wearing masks or not, it doesn't matter. The people that are just asking questions and saying, well, if you're going to do this, what is the point of it? And they're just yelling at you and say, see, you just don't care and you're just a blind Trump follower and that's what your problem is. I'm like, one, this isn't political. And two, you know, it doesn't make sense that you said, like Will said, you gave us the carrot, said, if you do everything we say, you put on the mask and you take this shot, you know, you can do whatever you want to do. And now they're telling you can't. So at the same time, they're saying all we need is more people to be vaccinated. The people who are reluctant to vaccinate, why would they do it if they see that on the back end, they're still going to have to wear a mask? Nick, what's going on in California?
Well, that's because, to me, the whole thing is bullshit. Everything from the beginning. And in California, you know, everybody here's wearing masks, but they took them off for a little while. But I'm telling you right now, they couldn't wait to put them back on.
Yep, New York.
I walk out of my house and there's people outside walking their dogs, you know, and the dog has a cone on and they've got a mask on. I mean, you know, they can't wait to do it. And
yep.
to me, that all of this stuff is about obedience. That it's never been about health. I mean, I challenge anybody to tell me the first time that you realized that the government actually cared about whether you got sick or not. When did that happen? Because that's never happened in the history of the world. And this is everything from they said you don't have to wear masks don't do anything. Then they said you have to wear a mask. Then they said you have to wear 2 masks. Then they said if you get vaccinated, you can do everything. You don't have to wear a mask again. And now we're back to, if you get vaccinated, you can still get it, so you need to wear a mask. None of it makes any sense. And to me, that means that it's all political. None of it has the slightest thing to do with health. This is a virus that has a 99.8% survival rate, if you even get it, unless you're over 78. So all of this is just about power and control. And once they figured out how they could manipulate the people this way, they're never going to give that power up. The only way that we ever get that power back is if we stop doing what they tell us to do. That's the only way out of this, because there'll be a Delta variant, and then there'll be an Epsilon variant, and then there'll be another variant, and then there'll be a Lambda Chi variant, and it'll never stop, because they want the power, and they're never going to give it up.
Yeah, I think I'm most bothered by 2 things. A lot of things bother me. Some things I just shrug. Because if you want to wear 12 masks, I really don't care. I have nothing against you. You want to take the vaccine, you want to do everything else, that's fine. But the 2 things that seem to bother me the most is the theater of it, right? And then, so you talked about Hollywood. I want to go back there real quickly. So when the fall season started last year, when I do watch TV now, I watch it for social commentary. Like, what are they trying to put in there? What are they trying to indoctrinate people with? And this time it was like, well, how are they going to handle the mask thing? And if you watched any shows, they did it in different ways. Some people just decided we're close to fantasy, so we're just going to act like it doesn't happen because, we're like in a third world, in a alternate universe. And then some said, we're going to kind of go all in. So, like, there was a show, it comes on CBS. It's about a black judge, All Rise. And they were, like, doing a virtual court and the whole night. Everybody was wearing masks. But the best were the people in the middle, like I talked to you when I asked you the rules about the set. So I'm watching, like, your procedural cop shows, your Law and Orders and stuff. And people are walking around with masks. The characters are walking down the street with masks. And then when they get into the office or when they get into the sweat box to yell at the perp, then everybody takes the mask off so you can hear them. And so I'm watching the camera, you can see the spit, right? And they're yelling at each other, and there's love scenes and all that. And then they go put the mask on. So even when they do the theater, they're doing the opposite. And I'm the one, you all should feel sorry for me. I'm the only one here who lives in New York. And though I'm not there now, I'm looking there and I'm dreading going back. Because now, here's the best. So like California, Nick, they were still wearing masks to the last second before they took them off, and they were dying to put them back on. They all got vaccinated. Now I was watching the local news there the other day, and they were all excited that the theater opened back up. And so now they are wearing masks while vaccinated and showing their vaccination cards. Now let me tell you, we can have a debate about the government asking you for vaccination cards and say what we like or don't like, and we can say stand up, and that's all fine. I'm on a whole nother level here. I'm sure many people have seen The Wire. And when I saw that, it made me think of the old Senator Clay Davis, shit. So there was a scene, if you all remember, where they said you were being investigated, and you've been on The Wire, right? And they said, well, who is it? It's the DA. He said, a local motherfucker? He's like, shit. I could see if it was the feds, but not some local, right? It's the same thing. I was like, all right, if the government wants to ask me to go into a government business for vaccination card, we can have that debate. But the stock boy at the grocery store? But the hostess at Applebee's? I'm like, shit, I'm not showing you anything. And I'm watching the news, and they're just happily like, we're so excited. Here's my card. And you can't say anything because you're just a racist jerk. It makes no sense.
No. It's like the social credit thing that they do in China. You're a good citizen if you have your little card and you show it and happily and you wear your mask. And if you exercise your freedom not to do that, you're a bad citizen and you're going to get punished and you're not going to be able to participate in society. And it's going to get worse. They're going to make it so that you can't get on a plane or you can't do business or you can't work. That's where they're headed. And if we don't stand up and say we're not taking this, then that's what's going to happen.
And then, Shamika, I'll come to you shortly, but anybody, Will's the number guy. He might want to respond to this. Because, Nick, you made another good point. You talk about if you even get it. The one number I never hear people talking about. For a while, CNN had their ticker of the number of people who were infected. Then it switched to the number of people vaccinated. But the number I never saw is the number. Give me the percentage of people who haven't gotten it yet or stepped foot in the hospital. Because if you want to do the full calculation, so you keep giving me what percentage of the people who got it went to the hospital and what percentage of the people on the respirator died. But if we're 330 million people, and I don't know what the number was last, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 million people have. So it's been a year and a half and you telling me 200 million people never got it? But I'm supposed to act like because they act as if you walk outside, even if there's no one around you, you're going to, like Will said, it's not the plague, you're going to just fall over. And that's not happening, but no one's allowed to even ask that question. Anybody want to talk about that?
Yeah,
Well, you can.
When you mentioned the numbers, COVID-19 is a great example of the old line about bullshit, like how to lie with statistics or lies, damned lies and statistics. You always have to keep an eye on the numbers that they're choosing to use. So right now, one point I want to make just right off bat, COVID-19 deaths are at their lowest level ever. Like, if you go back through last March or last February, there have never been fewer people actually dying of COVID. And, Charles, that's because what you said is just obviously true. I mean, by this point, what is it, 30% among blacks, 50% among whites, like half the population's vaccinated, plus 50% of the population must have had COVID before. I don't want to speculate, but you're exactly right about that. That's the elephant in the room that's never discussed. I mean, this is a disease that's been out there for a year, obviously infecting people. So if you combine 50 and 50, you get 100 to show off those brilliant mathematical skills, So there are very few people actually dying. Seniors are almost totally vaccinated, and that's that one cohort that really probably did need that vaccination. So, not that other people can't make that decision. I'm vaccinated. But I mean, so right now they're not talking about deaths because there aren't any. They're talking about cases. They're saying that people who have already gotten the vaccine can have a very mild, what's called breakthrough case. So they keep talking about how many cases and how many breakthrough cases there are and never mentioning that in a typical day now, maybe 200 people are dying as opposed to 4,000. And last thing, even that number was never put in context, right? So 3 million people die every year. There are almost 400 million Americans, and we're an older country in terms of population. So every year, COVID-19 last year was, I think, the fourth leading cause of death. Like, you had cancer, you had heart disease, and then it's up to you whether you put all accident and incident together in one category. But COVID-19 was about 340,000 deaths, if you accept the government's numbers, within that space of time, within a year. Even that is, like I said, it's not the Black Plague. But we're now down to a tenth of that, so they don't talk deaths, they talk cases. And you can just keep going with this. Like, one of the things that they do is saying we've seen a 50% surge, but from what? Like, if you read the data coming out of Australia, for example, they locked down their whole country. It's crazy. They have tanks rolling around. They did this because they said they had the highest number of cases ever in whatever their second city is, Melbourne, but it was like 8. So, I mean, what you say is you have an 800% surge in COVID cases in the media and people panic. They don't know that's 8 guys in a country where the vaccine
You went from
fully
1
available.
to 8.
So anyway, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, they never gave you the number.
Guys die?
Right. And I would argue that things are worse now. Right? The restrictions are going to be worse this fall when schools goes back and out. It's going to be worse than it was at the height.
But it's just absolutely, this is one of the things, if you're on the right or the center right, or you're a libertarian, or you're a real leftist, by the way, if you're left of Bernie and actually want justice for poor people, there's still some of those guys. But you are always put in this position of, like, you're the radical nut. Like, you're denying what the New York Times says. You're denying the science. And none of this has anything to do with science. I mean, you're absolutely right. Yeah, like, any planned lockdown now would probably be stricter than what we saw last year. But we have a vaccine, and we're only seeing 200 deaths today. Like, at some point, leaders, I think DeSantis has been good on this, leaders have to stand up and say, no, like, there's more to public health than COVID. And even in terms of preventing COVID's at its lowest levels ever. You can't just keep coming up with these hobgoblins and boogeymen as an excuse to pass these spending bills or to do whatever else. That really is, to some extent, the point of this. Like, there's no crisis that doesn't have a silver lining if you're a politician or a rich man.
Right. Shamika?
No, I'm just really sick of it. I don't have a problem with people being scared. Like, if you're scared and you feel like you need to, get a vaccination or wear 4 masks, whatever you need to do, I'm fine with that. The issue that I have is when everybody feels like then I need to be scared. I need to wear 4 masks. I need to get vaccinated. And I'm trying to figure out when we talk about logic or common sense, like if you're a female and you always fuck with a condom, what difference does it make if I fuck raw? How is that going to affect you? And even if I sleep with somebody that you're going to sleep with, if you always wear a condom, then you diminish your chances of getting anything that I could have given him. So this whole thought process of, well, if you get vaccinated, then you're keeping me safe. You're already safe if you claim the vaccination reduces symptoms and, diminishes your chances of death. What do I have to do with that? So all of these mandates, everybody just wanting, because they did it, then I got to do it. That's what's really pissing me off. Like, you live your life however you want to, but don't tell me that I have to do the same thing just because you're doing it. That's what I don't like that. Sorry for the graphic.
No. So basically, COVID is a venereal disease.
I mean, I had to equate that because, we're not going to act like people have not had STDs or don't know about it or not having sex. So that's how I had to, please, whatever you do in your home. And whatever I do, don't tell me I got to do it.
There's actually like one sentence. Shamika is totally right about that. First of all, like, AIDS didn't stop during COVID. Like, there are a lot of things other than COVID that kill large numbers of people. But one point, like, about public health, I was looking through the CDC regulations. These are the people that say put 2 masks on young kids and so on. One of the CDC suggestions is if you're a man and you're getting hit, quote unquote, oral sex, you're supposed to wear at least 1 condom. Like, that's the public health perspective. Like, you are supposed to reduce risk everywhere. Wear 3 condoms and 2 masks, or don't have sex at all, just live in your basement. And that's not in reality how most people can operate. So it's worth keeping that in mind when someone says, well, even if deaths are at their lowest level, who knows what could happen? Another variant could be possible. Anything is possible.
Right.
Just so I could keep this discussion in the gutter for a second. In California, they passed a law saying that it's not criminal for you to knowingly have AIDS and have sex with somebody and not tell them. They said that that's not a crime. But now they're trying to make it a crime for you to go into a grocery store if you're not vaccinated for this thing that is really just a cold that 99.8% of the people get over. That's a crime. That's what they want to make a crime. So and
it's not even knowingly giving them COVID because you might not even have it.
No, and you probably don't, because most of the CDC released a statement yesterday saying that a lot of the PCR tests, the test for COVID, really can't tell the difference between COVID and the flu. So when they start talking about cases, I mean, a lot of those cases, they don't even know that it's COVID, and really you have the statistic like 200, however many, 56 million cases. I mean, that's like documenting how many people have a sore throat in America right now. It's, if you're not counting serious deaths or hospitalizations and you're only counting cases, it's meaningless. It's absolutely meaningless. And that's why I say this is not about health. This is about what Shamika was talking about. It is about conformity. If you don't do what we say you should do, you're not a good person, and you need to be divided off. You need to be segregated. You need to be put aside because you're not a good citizen, and you should not be allowed to participate in society.
Well, I'm actually frustrated that we had to, it's probably been, several months since we talked about that, and we had to spend half our time talking about COVID again, but I see what's coming. I've been living free for 6 weeks, and I don't know what to do with myself. I'm like seeing the calendar turn, and I'm freaking out because I know it's just going to be madness, but we have to talk about what else is going on in California, and Will wants to talk about, I guess we go with you, Will, talking about canceling. You wanted to talk about shaming people and does it work, and cancel culture and how that ties into what's going on in Hollywood and in those spaces.
Yeah, well, these were just broad suggestions that we shot alone. I mean, so basically, I read some of Nick's jokes online, some of which were pretty funny, where he was talking about fat people, like fat shaming, quote unquote. Let me.
You sure that was Nick and not Shamika?
Well, it's a lot of members of our panel today, but okay, sent items. All right.
You thought it's fat. I'm sorry.
I like to shame people for a lot of stuff.
So I asked,
Right.
does shaming work? Like, Nick's famous for his fat, etc. jokes online. So my first question was just, does shaming work? Like, we hear a lot of, so in a sense, we hear a lot of criticisms of the idea of like slut shaming or fat shaming. You're not supposed to criticize people. But hopefully, if I weighed 350 pounds and was cheating on my girlfriend consistently with skanky people and developed a cocaine problem or something like that, hopefully my boys would take me aside and say, like, you need to get this together. This isn't acceptable. So does shaming work? What do you guys think on the panel? Should we shame more or shame less? And what is shaming?
I say Nick go. I got an opinion. I think we might all agree. Nick, what do you say? Shame or no shame?
Well, fat shaming works for me. I don't really care about the fat person, but it makes me feel better.
All right.
Shamika, fat shaming, go.
Okay.
Definitely. Definitely. I am all for it. And now that Nick has said that, that's going to be my mantra now. It works for me. I don't care about the fat person.
Right.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, I it's funny. I didn't see the tweet you were talking about with Nick, but I saw some people talking about, oh, no, I know what it was. I think Angel had asked Eduardo had asked a question about, will it work if you say these certain things to people? And Will was like, I like you, but yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying, somebody, is telling you all this negative stuff to motivate you or whatever. He's like, well, that's not what I meant. And I said, and I gave another example, and he was like, that's not what I meant. But it made me think about, there are whole societies that do this, right? Like, people talk about going to Japan and how clean it is, and and the way that people act socially, and obviously it's a cultural thing, but they're not, it's not this, like, you look at American people say, well, you got these religious evangelicals who keep you in line by this crazy belief of God and all this kind of stuff. No, they shame you. This is the way our society works, and if you don't conform, we shame you. Of course it works. It doesn't really work, and the only reason it works less, if it works less, is because we've allowed so much bad behavior because we didn't shame and we didn't even say that this is wrong, that everything, all the lines are blurred. But if it weren't for that, shaming would definitely, that's the reason why when you got pregnant as a teenager in the 60s, you went off to camp, and then when you came back, mama had another kid, right? Today, it doesn't work, because today when your teenager has a kid, you throw him a party. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the difference. So I think shaming works. I just don't know if it works as well now, because people don't have any shame. Everybody's okay with whatever they do. The whole you do you, unless it's COVID, then don't do you, get vaccinated. But I think that's the reason why shaming doesn't work as well as it used to. Nick is like a light. He's popping in and out. But
yeah, I definitely agree with the babies, because when I was in high school, if you got pregnant, you got shipped off to another high school across town. You didn't get to just walk around pregnant. But by the time my daughter went to high school, they actually had a daycare center in the exact same high school. And I'm like, wait, I thought you're supposed to get shipped off across town somewhere else and feel ashamed.
You're lying. Please tell me you're lying, Shamika.
No.
That was a joke.
No.
They have daycare centers in high schools now.
Yes.
And like when I went to high school, they had a smoking section outside. So they swapped the smoking section for the daycare section.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I think about shaming. Now, obviously, shaming is different from canceling. Right? Trying to make people feel bad about bad behavior is different from saying, I don't like the way you think, so you don't get to, I don't know, exist. Yeah. And that's a lot of what we got here. So let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think about that, Nick? Is that getting worse? Is it about the same? Is it easing? I mean, because I'm sorry, at least outside of your bubble, not that you're really in a bubble because you get out of it, but in general, I see people who we consider liberals who are a little less tolerant of the whole canceling than they used to be. Maybe it's because some of them have been canceled. Maybe because they can finally see where this is heading. But I think that they're starting to push back against it. But do you think it's you see it as the same level of intenseness where you are and in your circle?
Well, it's starting to backfire because some of the liberals are it's biting them in the ass. They're the ones that are now getting canceled by each other, which I always think is hilarious. That's some of the funny. It's like I always say, lefty on lefty action is so hot, just because it's just so much fun to watch them chew each other up over this stuff. And cancel culture, the opposite. To me, shaming is about trying to make people not participate in bad behavior, like overeating or like, getting pregnant out of wedlock. It's sort of like, those behaviors should be discouraged because they're dangerous and they cause misery. Cancel culture is more about, affecting behavior that you simply don't like. Like if you just don't like the way somebody talks about somebody else. And so it's not about canceling bad behavior. It's about telling people which behavior is acceptable.
Right.
And that's what differentiates cancel culture from just simple fat shaming, I think.
Yeah. But is it you think it's as they start to eat their own, you think it's going to ease up a bit, or you think it's just going to keep going?
I think it's going to keep going because a lot of the cancel culture is about power. It's about taking power away from one group and giving it to another. And as long as it continues to work, they're going to continue to do it. And so it's the same thing as the COVID thing. As long as we sit there and let them do this to us, if we let the bullies tell us what to do, then the bullies are going to keep telling us what to do. That's the way.
And a lot of it is because people are offended by things, and they're offended by more things than they used to be. I think they used to be offended by 12 things, and now they're offended by 1,200 things. So you have more ability to do things that would make somebody want to cancel you because everything bothers them. It used to be just when Shamika talked about fat people, but now it's, race, it's gender, it's income, it's sexual preference, it's calling somebody dumb. It's anything you do. It's like, well, no, you need to take that back. And, him apologizing is not good enough. And that's the other thing, that for these people to be so progressive, they don't want to accept apologies. I hear that there's some rapper who Little Baby,
the baby.
The baby. I hear the baby said some derogatory things about gay people, and he apologized. And we're not accepted. No, we don't accept.
I didn't even think they were derogatory.
And the best thing is the we're not accepted. This is what I love. I'm sure you all would attest to this. The people who are like, we're not accepting your apology, are never the person who's supposed to be apologizing. It's never gay people. It's straight people saying, I don't accept the apology you made to him. And you say you don't think what he said was what did he say? Because I don't listen to the baby or whatever.
He said something like, if you don't have AIDS, raise your hand. If you don't have AIDS, about to die in 2 weeks, raise your hand. Then he said, ladies, if your pussy smells like water, put your hands in the air. Then he said, if you weren't sucking dick in the parking lot, fellas, if you weren't sucking dick in the parking lot, something like that, put your hands in the air. And then somebody else said, yeah, because some of y'all are suspect. So to me, they took the sucking dick in the parking lot and the HIV or AIDS comment and put it together. But to me, when he addressed if you aren't dying of AIDS or HIV, that was to everybody, straight, gay, male, female. And of course, you're not dying within 2 weeks. So I could see people saying, hey, you ain't got to call us out like that. But if you're sucking dick in the parking lot, I mean, why would you want to be sucking dick in the parking lot at a concert anyway? Shouldn't you be trying to go in I thought it was in reference to people on a DL, not necessarily gay people that are out. That's how I took it. I didn't see anything wrong with the comment, and I certainly would not have apologized.
Okay, back up. There was a lot there. I'm a little lost. Well, first of all, the way you said it sounded like the old school hip hop concert where you throw your hands in the air. Is that so? Yes. He was on stage performing at the time. So it's almost like canceling a comedian. It's not like he was in real life to say in an interview on foreign policy. It's like, well, I think that we should be tougher on China, and I hate the gays. It's not like that happened. He was in the middle of a rap saying, trying to get people, it's what you do. It's like, if you're ugly, ugly people shut up, right? To make people scream. And if you shut up, that's on you. You're supposed to scream. That's the point. So that's weird. Right. And then it sounded like somebody in the callback made the comment. So he's in trouble for the callback. And if you're in the parking lot instead of in the concert, in order to answer your question, you're just a whore. But I mean, do those people still exist? Are they even still whores, or is it just like, hey, don't judge me. Whatever I do, I'm just doing me. Is that what they do now? I don't know.
That's what they do now.
Oh, that's it. So there are no more whores. Okay. Well, in that case, then maybe the concert was boring, and so maybe they were in the concert and they slipped out and then they came back in. But it all seems mad. So the whole point that he got to position to apologize seems weird to me. But I'm just stuck on the fact that they're like, no, we're not accepting it. Not good enough.
It's because you can't apologize to a leftist. You can't. You can't apologize to them because they don't have the capacity to forgive you. And basically, all you're doing if you apologize to them, it's like signing a confession to the KGB in the old USSR. They just use it to execute you. That's all they want.
Yeah, blood in the water.
Yeah, they don't want to forgive you. They don't want us to be brought together. They want to divide us. And so if they have something on you, they're going to use it against you for the rest of your life.
And why don't these people ever think, okay, I get that, man, this is really hurting, blah, 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 but it's probably going to go away. What's going to happen if I don't apologize? Right? So people are going to be mad. They're mad at you anyway, and then they're going to move on. Because let's be real, Mr. Baby. These people who are upset with you don't listen to your music anyway.
Okay.
So it's just the random corporate types that are mad. So you lose one endorsement. Your rappers are your rap fans will like you more because you stay true to yourself. So you sell another 20,000 albums and you lose the one endorsement. And then in 3 years you get a different endorsement. So just be like, well, I said what I said and move on and don't keep talking about it.
This I actually think is important. So there's a lot here. First of all, Nick's right. Never apologize to an SJW. More broadly, you shouldn't apologize to an enemy most of the time anyway. You apologize when you sincerely feel you've done something bad and you want to change your behavior. If someone finds an old tweet where you were cursing out one of your buddies 15 years ago, you in fact almost certainly feel no guilt about that. You have no intention of changing the way you talk in locker rooms. You're just trying to be polite. So avoid that. Be a grown adult. But the thing that's so notable about the DaBaby thing is that now they're going after rappers. Like, all of hip-hop is about sex with promiscuous women and killing people.
It's shooting people. You have to cancel everyone.
Yeah, and I guess that's not true for, like, the gospel stuff or, like, some of Kanye, but I mean...
Yeah, like 3 people, but you pretty much got to cancel everybody.
The song I was listening to working out today was Try Me by Montana 300, and it's literally just him talking about killing people. Like, these are the people I'm going to kill, to, like, a nice beat. He has another song called Ice Cream Truck, where the chorus is like, 5 of us are going to jump out that ice cream truck. Like, we're going to kill you. So for someone to pull up a Montana 300 lyric and say, I don't know, seems a little homophobic to me. I mean, you'd expect the response, if you want to be taken seriously in that street game at all, just to be like, fuck out of here. You know, like, I'm not... Yeah. It's weird to see rappers apologizing to organizations like GLAAD. I discourage that. I don't like homophobia, but I mean, this is like when Dick's Sporting Goods stopped selling rifles. This is like a store with a 90% male, quote-unquote, redneck clientele, some brothers in there as well. They were protested by these left-wing activist groups that didn't really look like athletes to me, and they discontinued their entire firearms line. Like, you have to understand at some level that's going to cost you way more money than you're going to make as a result of, increased patronage from the hard left. So you've got to keep that in mind. Like, unless you genuinely are terribly apologetic, make your own logical decision there. I don't think DaBaby has changed his position on giving head in parking lots. Like, that sounds like a joke someone at a concert.
Right.
And yeah,
well, see, that's the key. Oh, go ahead.
Go on. No, I was going to say, like, I listened to the comments like Shamika did. I mean, it was just a guy who was like, throw your hands up in the air, except more profane. My actual reaction was, there's a lot of women lying during number 2 here. And then he goes on to, like, number 3, which is, like, and whatever it was, like, oh, the men that ain't out there in the cars. It's like, this is by the way, this is the distinction between cancel culture and shaming. There are 2 distinctions. One, I think cancel culture focuses on generally pretty normal behavior. Like, I don't approve of homophobia, but like rappers cursing during rap concerts, or like people making jokes on Twitter 10 years ago. as opposed to behavior that's generally been thought of as bad, like actually having sex that could transmit AIDS, which is what people are normally shamed for. The second difference, and these are differences of degree, is that cancel culture wants a lot more than shaming or friendly teasing does. Cancel culture wants the person who said the forbidden thing destroyed. So they actually want this rapper gone from his platform, so on. I wouldn't have a problem with gay people shaming the baby, quote unquote, saying, like, you're a homophobe, bro. And him responding and saying, well, there's some sexual things I disapprove of, and people sort of yelling at each other. That's free speech. Trying to get the baby's record deal pulled, this guy who pulled himself out of the hood, that's crazy. That is what cancellation means. That's why people use that term.
Yeah. And the other piece about apologizing, when you say never apologize to a leftist, which is true. How about this one? This was before all the cancel culture. Don't apologize if you don't mean it.
Yes, totally.
Right.
Right. Don't just apologize because somebody wants you to. I'm like, I'm sorry you hurt, but I'm not apologizing because I meant every word I said. Right? Or I'm not apologizing because it was a joke. Grow up.
Exactly.
Right. It was a joke.
Exactly.
Right. I that just makes no sense to me. I think that I think what I want to talk about last though is having Nick here, and he is so, openly antagonistic, to say the least, to the left. But surprisingly, I don't want to talk about the left here. I want to talk about whatever you want to call them, Republicans, the right, conservatives, whatever label you want to put on them. And I know you don't get to voice that much, right? Because you're too busy, fighting off all the crazy leftists that hate you so much. But you got to have some things to say about them, because the left doesn't get it. But there's a real distinction. Like, I identify as a conservative, but I don't identify as a Republican. And I say that, and when they talk about us, they just lump us all together, and they say, well, you all think this, and it's not, all one-sided. But to those of us who understand conservatism and understand what we believe, that we know that there are a lot of people that call themselves Republicans who aren't really conservative. And so I wanted to ask you kind of pay attention to what's going on and what the regular people say, and what, some of the politicians and you speak to. What is happening with conservatism? Why is, and this is before Trump, even early on in his presidency, before the last year and a half, there was already there's always, with Trump, they talk about the establishment. So there was a strain of Republicans who were just like, hey, I'm Republican, but it really, that the typical politician, backdoor dealing kind of people. Then you had the Freedom Caucus, but then you got people who just like, I just care about true conservatism. So why are they all like, running in different directions, and they can't seem to get a clear understanding of what they really believe? I mean, it's your core belief. You know what you believe. Why is it so complicated to just say, here's what we believe. We want to align ourselves with people who believe what we believe and move the ball forward?
You're asking me.
Yes,
right?
I'm asking you.
Well, I think that what the Trump presidency actually revealed to us is that there's a corruption in Washington that affects both parties. And there's a political class that is there simply to protect itself. Now, there are a few hardcore conservatives in the Republican Party. There are none left in the Democrat Party, but there's a few conservatives who are actually there because they believe what they're saying. There's an awful lot of politicians up there who basically don't really go into politics because they have core beliefs. They go into politics thinking, okay, I'm in this district. This district is 60% Republican, so I'm going to have a better chance if I identify as a Republican and I say all that stuff, and then I'll get in office, and then I'll figure out what side of the aisle I need to be on in order to stay there. And so you have a lot of people that are actually our elected officials who don't operate on principle. They operate out of self-interest and out of, what's best for me. And that's how you get all these politicians like Dianne Feinstein that have been in Congress for 40 years at a $200,000 a year salary, and she's selling an estate for $41 million. The math doesn't add up.
She's saving up her nickels, Nick. Stop.
Right. And so that's what I think is going on. Trump was a wrecking ball. I think the Trump presidency was so unexpected that it shocked half of the Republican Party as much as it did the Democrats. And those two sides got together and said, we can't have this shit. This shit is going to ruin everything that we have set up, all the corruption that we've set up, and so we have got to stop him. And I think that's what happened. I think they combined, they joined forces, and they got rid of him.
Well, I think the money thing is really key, only in the sense that, well, not even just the money. The celebritizing of the politicians is the problem, because now you can be a celebrity, right? I couldn't make it in Hollywood, but if I become a congressman and I say outlandish stuff, or I just try to be hip, on the right or the left, if I'm AOC or Marjorie Taylor Greene, it doesn't matter. If you say enough stuff to get you on the headlines enough times, then you're a star now. And then you move on. You get so big that you forget why you were there. It's all about your persona, and you become a celebrity. You really don't care about anything else. And
you're raising money off your name, and you're raising money off the things you say.
Right.
And,
and that's what happens. So what you get is, and I asked somebody the other day about this, because I'm working, because I think kids don't understand civics, and I'm working on this civics contest with the Coolidge Foundation. And somebody asked me why, and I talked about how little people know. And then I said, here's the thing: there's 435 members of Congress. Most people know about 7 of them. They know the people who are making the noise, left or right. You don't have to agree with it. I'm being factual. They know AOC because she's always got something to say. They know Marjorie Taylor Greene. They know, certain people because they always have something to say. So they become stars. They're bigger than life, and now they can say, "Hey, I'm an A-lister. I can hobnob with billionaires, and I can raise all this money just by speaking." So that becomes my thing, and I think that's the problem. In addition to the establishment thing, we had that, and Trump's presidency totally exposed that. But now we have the advent of the celebrity politician, and I don't know how we get rid of that. But I think that's a bigger problem, probably, than the swamp or whatever else you want to call it, because these people don't care about anything, right? They're like Hillary. Like, when I used to watch Hillary, I was like, I don't agree with her, but I'm not afraid of her. And then I'm like, she doesn't really have then I was like, well, wait a minute, I am, because I would rather have somebody like a Bernie, because I know what Bernie believes and I know what Bernie's going to do, than to have somebody like Hillary who's just like, I'll just do whatever will give me what I want. Oh, you're going to back a truck up to my house? Well, I hate that now. I mean, I really love it, but I will go out and fight against it with all my heart so I can get that truck backed up to my house. And I think that's more dangerous. Somebody with power, like you say, coming from the Midwest, or somewhere where the average household income is $50,000 a year, and we're paying them $175,000 a year, putting them on committees and giving them a celebrity, and then giving them 2 million Twitter followers. That's some dangerous power for somebody with no soul.
And we're basically ruled right now, governed by a lot of people with no real principles and no soul. And that's why we are headed very quickly towards a very totalitarian style of government. This nation was built on the idea of individual liberty, and the government that we have now is mainly focused on taking that away and making us a country of tribes, basically, of just different sections of people that they choose which people they want to pit against the other people, and say, if you vote for us, we'll protect you from those awful people over there. And really what's happening is this whole Republican-Democrat divide, that is what it's about. It's about pitting us against each other so that the people on top can increase their power.
Yeah, and most things that hurt us the most, when they get into the room, they all vote for it anyway. I mean, there's like these small fringe things that they fight about all the time, those same hot button issues. But everything else, they're like, all right, raise taxes, all right. I don't want you to raise it that much. I only want you to raise it this much. Okay. All right, give the executive more power. Okay, let's give him more power. We like him. He's our guy. Oh, take it away. We don't like him. He's a different guy. And nothing really happens from it. So,
and then they decide this is going to be bipartisan, so that way they can't blame either of us. Right? We all agreed.
Yeah. So why don't I think that with all the problems of the left, I think when it comes to that thing, the right has the bigger problem. Not that the politicians are worse, but they're the ones who are kind of naive, who say, well, I'm a vote. We just need to fight the left. The left is bad. Just get that Republican in and everything will be different. Then that Republican gets in if they win. And then they just, go along to get along. And we, you're like, oh, I'm so upset. And then we either reelect them or we just find the next one who's just going to do the next thing. And then we keep thinking it's going to change. and it doesn't. So I don't. Where do you think it's going to go from here, Shamika? You're nodding. You got anything you want to add?
No, I was just thinking how disappointed I am. Like, I thought that the right would be a little meaner, would be a little harder, sterner. Like, I thought when it came to the men, like, I thought the right would probably be more alpha males, and it was the little bitch boys on the Democrat side. And I guess, like you said, if you're in there and you don't have a real purpose, or if you just want to be a star, you aren't gonna, put your foot down and actually get things done. And I've just been disappointed in what I've seen on the right, because I feel like the left is constantly fighting for things, of course, that I don't agree with, but they keep going. The right, I feel like they're a little weaker than I thought they actually were. I thought I was coming to the side with the men with pocket knives and change jingling in their pocket, just gonna get something done. And they're weak to me.
There are lawyers and investment bankers.
Yeah.
Will?
Yeah,
and there's a few
so
of them.
first of all, as a political scientist, I start from the position that most people are bad in terms of practical.
It's like your weekly phrase. Let me remind you that people suck.
No, I mean, I like people. People are amoral, predatory apes, but there's only one alternative to being a predator, and it's a lot worse. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that most politicians are scumbags. In general, like Shamik, I mostly prefer the right to the left. I think when you look at the Democrats, you get the scum off the top of politics and charity. And when you look at the Republicans, you get the scum off the top of business and law. And I prefer business and law. They've had more empirical, real-world experience. But a real issue here that I think we're all getting at is that most politicians don't really represent the American people at all. We are a country that, like ancient Rome, has developed a real elite that anyone, even at that sort of upper middle class level that we're all probably at, like it or not, could describe in a sentence. Like coastal, big city, Chicago's considered one of the smaller places you can live, mostly white, but that doesn't matter to these guys, all upper middle class, went to the same 35 colleges, the Ivies, a few Big Ten institutions, a few SECs, so on down the line. And that group of people, even on the right, doesn't have much in common with the ordinary people in America. They often don't like the ordinary people in America. They usually don't. So, I mean, you could argue that the old joke is the Republicans represent the top 1%, the Democrats the next 9%. I think that's actually flipped with the rise of the tech bros. But the question is, who represents most people? Most people don't feel much in common with most politicians because most politicians don't feel anything in common with them. The world of someone who went to Brearley and then Yale Law, right or left, is totally different from the world of a steel worker who lives in Gary, Indiana. And by the way, that guy I just described could be a Republican, Democrat, black, white. It almost doesn't matter. Because Gary, that's your hometown, yeah, solid city.
Yeah.
But I mean, it almost doesn't matter there because he's being ignored. So I mean that's why people have a problem with the guys in Washington. There's no one there for you most of the time. And by the way, that's why people that might be on quote unquote the fringe, MTG or AOC, whatever issue you might have with both those women, people like them like they like Trump because they thought they might actually pay attention to them. So hopefully we'll get someone without the flaws of an AOC or even MTG, even to Trump, but with that same message to the people. But that remains to be seen.
Right. And I guess I want to leave it. Oh, go ahead, Nick. You had something?
Well, no, I was just going to add that's why they hated Trump so bad, is because those people that felt like they had no voice saw something in Trump, and look at the contempt that all the political class has heaped on the people that support Trump. Trump always had this line about, it's not really me that they're after, I'm just in the way, it's you that they hate. Yeah. And that's absolutely true. They hate the people that supported Trump more than they ever hated Trump.
Yeah, and they're shockingly proving that, which is I think a terrible political play, and we'll see what happens long term. But we're all in different states, and we're talking about the state of the country and all these things that are going bad. And unfortunately, Nick, I want to leave with you making us feel better about where we are. So let's talk about how did I want to describe California? Let's talk about the state of recall, homelessness, expensive housing, and poop on the street. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's a feel-good topic.
Yeah, makes us feel better because we don't have to deal with as much of that. So, what's going on with Newsom and Larry Elder and the others?
Yeah, well, Larry's a friend of mine, has been for years, and yeah, I'm really excited to see him in the prime position right now. He's the leader, and you know, the homelessness situation out here is, I think, maybe 65 to 70% of why people want to recall Newsom, because it's just gotten so visible and so crazy and so bad. There's people leaving Malibu and Santa Monica and trying to move to Burbank just because of the homeless situation, you know.
Right.
And so that,
because they camped out on the beach and things like that, right? Didn't they take over a
yeah.
couple of the beaches?
Well, they've taken over every bridge. You know, if you go over to North Hollywood, Burbank has a separate police department, separate city government, so it's not so bad here, even though you do see some homeless here and you never used to. But if you go out of Burbank, I mean, every single bridge, every underpass, everything, it's a tent city. And it's just pathetic.
San Diego was like that when I was there. You know, I got to say, you know, we never say anything good about some of these places. They got a problem. Like New York has a problem. It's getting a little worse because of what's been happening. But one thing they do that's smart that most of the other big cities don't see, I saw it in D.C. when I lived in Chicago. Chicago got saved because of Lower Wacker. You know, for those who don't know Chicago, there's an area that's underground and you don't have to see. But New York, as bad as people say the homeless problem is, New York is the only big city that doesn't allow tents. So they won't push you off the street. They won't stop you, whatever. But you can put on a piece of cardboard and lay over the grate if you want to. You put up a tent, they'll come and take it down. And, you know, it seems weird, but you look at California, you look at D.C., you look at Chicago. It's like that because they let them create these tent cities. And so now you see it. It's just like they don't have to move because in their mind it's a permanent spot. And it's just so bad. And people don't understand. It's not a knock on them. We want them to get the help and that kind of thing. But it's been a few years since I was in California. When I was there, it was terrible. Especially, actually, even in San Diego was really bad. And the whole downtown area smells bad. And I think that there's a way that I say that this, I mean, you're kind of at ground zero, but I say the solution is easy, but this is definitely a left problem because they don't want to do the next step. If I were to say, because I'm like, you know, I'm a compassionate guy sometimes, you know, I'm the alter ego of Will, who's like pretty much like, I'm amoral, let him die. And I'm like, you know, do what you got to, do what you can do to help people. That's cool. Get them off the street, give them the medical or the mental health they need. Come up with the government dollars.
Well, my position
the problem would be
doesn't let them die. It's that people need to understand that there's a range of options with that.
That you might die.
When people say we must do everything we can, no, we don't have to do that at all.
Not everything, no. But my point is, even if you were to do that, that's why I always say with the left, give them the argument, because they're going to run into a dead end. So I offer them, how much money you want? I got the checkbook open. I write them the check. You do what you want to do. They won't do the one thing that they have to do. They won't do it. So you give them all the money. That's the spanking new apartments just for the homeless. There's medical facilities. There's everything they need. We all know because we have common sense. There's a percentage of them that's like, I'm just out here. I like being out here. I don't like having to live by rules. Screw you. I'm not going to live.
90% of them. Yeah.
Screw you. I'm not going. Yeah. The left won't let you force them. Mm-hmm. So even if I were to say, clean facility, check. Enough beds, check. Medical care if they need it, yes. Mental health, they all have it. But the caveat, the trade-off is they must get off the street, and if they don't do it willingly, I'm going to take them off the street. The left was like, well, you can't do that. They have the right to do what they want to do, and that's why you have these situations. Right. Because in New York, they house most of the families that are homeless. You can find a place. It's the people who don't want a place.
Yeah, it's really bad in California. Like, in their tents, they have like living rooms. They may have like a couch. Back to the left of the tent is the kitchen. Like, it is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, it's warm here. In New York and Chicago, it's cold as shit. You can't stay outside all year long.
Right.
In Los Angeles, you can, you know, and that's why they come here too. The combination of the weather makes it survivable, and the fact that it's run by Democrats who won't take them off the streets. This is why they congregate here. And I look at it like, you know, if you've ever gone through a situation where you have a family member that is addicted to something, or that, you know, there's a certain point at which you just go, I've done all I can for you. If you're going to choose to continue to live this way, I can't help you anymore. And you have to cut them loose. It's called tough love. And, you know, that's the situation for a lot of these people. If they were able, you know, building them a house is not going to save them because they don't want that. if
What
they
happened to
wanted
the
that,
thing?
you know.
What happened to the thing where they're going to let people live in people's backyard? Let the homeless live in your backyard.
Well, people in Malibu are not going to put up with that.
No, I can imagine.
The
what
rich
happened.
liberals are not going to let that happen. You know?
That was so awesome. I said, wait a minute, so you're going to let them...
Like,
What'd you say, Will?
I said guns and lawyers happen to it. I mean, no one's going to tolerate
That's
that
what-
anywhere. The issue in California, I think, is that these rich left-wing clowns, and I probably have to jump off after this comment, actually. It was great talking to you guys. But the issue in California and a lot of these cities is that these rich left-wing clowns have no intention of subjecting themselves to the policies that they approve for the poors. You know, so, like, we saw this thing the other day where Cori Bush is getting $70,000 worth of professional armed security at, like, every half year. That was, like, a 6-month billing cycle. But she wants to defund the police. It's the same thing in California. I mean, people are all too willing to have bums camping out, or the unhoused, or whatever you want to call them, camping out in, like, 4-room pup tents in black or poor white neighborhoods. Yeah, if they try moving to Malibu or, you know, Pacific Palisades, I mean, I don't know, whatever's out there in California. If they try doing that, you're immediately going to see an extraordinary backlash from the same people that say it's everybody's duty to take care of the homeless. That's as predictable as the sun rising in the morning. So... yeah, one actual comment on homelessness. Homelessness is actually a complex problem. It's mostly mental illness, drug abuse. Like, when people say things like the homeless are homeless because they don't have homes, if you took 1,000 bums and put them in McMansions, at the end of a year, you'd probably have 1,000 destroyed McMansions, or maybe 800 destroyed McMansions. You have to really get serious about mental health care, the treatment of our veterans, so on, in order to deal with homelessness. But being quote unquote compassionate by letting people sleep outside under trees isn't doing it. That's the opposite of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And while we're talking about Cori Bush, can we just say we need to defund her grocery list because she's another person that's fat.
Yeah, she needs to be shamed. She'd be a lot healthier. You know?
Nick, you want to will you get gracious with your time? Can you tell everybody what you're working on and promote anything you want to promote? Let us know.
Well, I've got a website for the last documentary.
If you're not just frozen there, because I can partially see you.
Oh, can you hear me?
He's shooting a film. I know. He told me.
I've got a website.
Interesting to hear what it was. He's kind of,
I don't know what part he played in. I think I saw that he played in The Best of Enemies. I want to know which part he played because we just watched that like a week or two ago.
Well, I think he's a strong silent type. He likes to keep on. He likes to keep his acting career close to himself. Okay. He doesn't like to talk about it. Oh no, he does want to talk about it.
I'm back. In the Best of Enemies, I played a guy named Garland Keith. I was the guy in the white suit. I sat next to Sam Rockwell at the big thing. I was like his kind of older mentor. He was kind of a Klansman, and I was the president of the White Citizens Council.
Okay.
And and I was asking what you were working on. If you wanted to promo anything, talk about your last documentary, whatever you got coming up.
There's a documentary that's out now. It's at a website, shedhisgrace.com. That's SHED, Shed His Grace.
Yeah, that's where the clip I played was from.
Yeah, that's where, and it's a documentary about the Bible and the Constitution and how that relationship between America and God has changed over the years. Yep. And that's available right now and doing really well. And I'm working on a documentary right now, which is about the truth about what happened on January 6th, which I figure when I put that out, I'm going to get a lot more work in Hollywood.
Right.
Well, that's true. I mean, look for his stuff. It's always good. And I got to give you credit. I don't know how you do it, but I talk about how, with your Twitter account, how you're able to still get work. I mean, I know you do a lot of things on your own now because you've been around long enough and you know the business. But, Nick still somehow made it into a couple Oscar-nominated films in the last few years. I mean, maybe did you change your name when you applied for the position? Did you send a doppelganger here to do the script?
Well, I'm not so famous that everybody knows what I think. It's like I'm a character actor. You kind of got to seek me out. Right. I did a movie, The Shape of Water, a few years ago.
I think it might have won Best Picture.
It won Best Picture. But the thing about it, Charles, I just decided a few years ago I'm not going to be scared about what I do. I'm not going to be I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. I'm not going to let the bullies stop me. And it kind of cuts both ways. I mean, I'm sure there's some things that I don't get because of what I say. But I did a movie in the Dominican Republic that was done by a Dominican director named Josea Marie Cabral, and it's on HBO Max right now. It's called Hotel Capilia. And he called me up because he had a character in that. I'm the only American in the movie, and he said he had written that character based on what his idea of Donald Trump was. And he basically called me up and said he was casting me because he figured I understood Trump. So it cuts both ways. It's some people hire me because of that, because I speak my mind. So.
That's true. So do you, leaving us, do you have any advice for anybody in Hollywood who wants to keep working but doesn't want to, compromise their principles?
Well, I've been saying this for years. I think the old Hollywood is dead. I think they don't know it yet. I think it's dying out. And I think what's going to happen is content is going to start coming from everywhere. And the technology for making movies has been so democratized, anybody can do it now. It's all about content. You can shoot a movie on your iPhone that looks just as good as anything they're going to shoot in Hollywood. So I encourage people, make your own projects,
build your own,
raise your own money, find a platform, find a way to find your audience and get it straight to them, because you don't have to go through the Hollywood gatekeepers anymore. They're not in control.
That is a great way to leave it. Now, Shamika, anything you want to add?
Nope.
You wanted to ask him about North Carolina, you said.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say whoop whoop because he's from North Carolina. That was,
Yeah, my sister lives in Raleigh. My parents are still there. I grew up in the western part of the state, near Asheville.
But you live in Raleigh, right?
Where that was. I was like, I've never heard of that place.
But don't you live in Raleigh?
I'm in Durham.
Oh, you're in Durham, right?
Yeah.
It's still, 2 blocks away.
I went to Carolina. I spent 4 years in Chapel Hill. And so I lived in Wilmington for a long time. Yeah, I've lived all over that place. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like Carolina over Duke, so that's great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All sane people do. Yeah.
Look at that. Well, we made it through, even with the technical difficulties. I thank you, Nick, for coming on and sharing your time. I appreciate it. We lost Will along the way, so we have to, say goodbye for Will and Shamika. And thank you all for joining us, and catch you next week.
Patriot J, I'm saving the day. Patriot J, I'm saving the day from you commies who let know you can't fuck with me. I got a country to say.
Thank you.
God bless the US of A. Land of the free and the home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to say, cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving the day.